Thank you very much indeed, Dr Morrison. It's a pleasure and an honour to serve under my constituency neighbour as chairman on his first day, I think, in the chair. And particular congratulations to all members who have spoken and spoken so powerfully and eloquently on behalf of their constituents. And also I pay tribute to the campaign, as many of whom are present, silent witnesses to our debate today, and I honour them for their long campaign for justice. And particular congratulations to the new Minister, who I'm very glad to welcome to his place. He is, of course, his first day outing as a Minister has quite a job to do to answer this debate. He is, of course, very familiar to us over many years on the media as an independent expert, offering ostensibly impartial advice, helpful to the Labour Party, for many years. So I'm very glad to see him in his rightful place at last. And of course, I exonerate him for this decision as a new minister. He didn't make this decision. He's been thrown into this by his party and by his boss, the Secretary of State. And of course, perhaps he could change the policy now that he is new to the role and not implicated in the decision. Perhaps it was a condition of accepting office that the government revisit this topic. And I very much hope that's what we're going to hear from him shortly. Particular congratulations, of course, to my right honourable friend, my friend from South Holland and the Deepings. I honour his campaign, his long campaign on behalf of women born in the 1950s. It's not just because he loves everything from the 1950s that he is he's taking this position. He's absolutely right in everything that he says. Now, of course, the complexity of the matter has been very well addressed by the Ombudsman and indeed by members speaking today, and I won't revisit the issue in any detail. It does, of course, reflect a series of governments over the work of series of governments over 30 years since the 1995 decision to equalise the retirement age. I was glad to see in the Ombudsman report that the DWP has cooperated fully with his inquiry. I'm glad to say that ministers and officials respected the process of the Ombudsman. I will note, because I'm sure the point that has been made, and it was made by the Secretary of State in the main chamber when the decision was announced, the suggestion that this matter could have been cleared up by the previous government in consequence of the Ombudsman's report is, I think, a little unfair, given that the report came out only 2 months before the general election was called. It's now taken 5 months for the government to bring forward its decision. So these things are complex, and I respect the challenge the government has had. I wish we'd had time to address it ourselves, but the voters wouldn't have it. And this, of course, is this government's decision. Now, just to address the central issue, and as members have said, the Ombudsman found that there were adequate communications were made throughout the period, but there was a particular maladministration, as has been repeatedly mentioned, this delay in sending out letters in 2005 to 7. And I think it is a good thing that the Secretary of State has acknowledged this maladministration in her response to the Ombudsman. I appreciate that. I accept it, and that she apologised on behalf of the then Labour government and the DWP. And the fact is, however, that while no direct financial loss may have been caused by the maladministration of communication, no direct change to people's incomes, nevertheless, as we've heard so eloquently from members, the decision or the maladministration, the failure to communicate properly, has caused women to make decisions in ignorance of their true circumstances. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
Thank you very much for giving way. Would the member then be surprised that the Parliamentary Ombudsman has actually issued another report this morning damning the Department of Works and Pensions, who have been criticised for more failures, and actually she states for failing to learn from its mistakes, as she has revealed yet another case of a pensioner who was not told for 8 years about a change to their pension that would leave them £3,000 a year worse off.
Very grateful to the honourable member, and he highlights the central point here, which is that although, as members have said, the change of policy itself was not the subject of the Ombudsman's inquiry, it was the failure to communicate which directly impacted the circumstances of many, many women, because they didn't understand the circumstances they were going to be in. It changed the decisions that they were making. I'll give way.
I thank you, Shadow Minister. Does he share with me, and I believe with many in this chamber, the good book refers to righteous anger? Honourable gentlemen will know that. Righteous anger today for those elderly people. Anger for the women who look towards their retirement as they end of pain and exhaustion, who were unable to plan financially to enable them to retire earlier due to the nature of the communication that they were given by government. Righteous anger deserves justice. Does he agree that those ladies who I represent and others represent in this chamber, they demand justice? Whether the Minister's responsible or not, the Minister has to answer and give a justifiable yes to what they want.
I'm very grateful. I think he's absolutely right. I've heard it said that love is anger is love in the presence of injustice. And I think the righteous anger that so many people feel here in this chamber and beyond reflects the essential injustice that we have seen. So the government, in its response to the report, made this central defence, and we might hear it again from the Minister. They dispute that, that women were left out of pocket because of the failure of communication made by DWP all those years ago. The Secretary of State argued in the Commons that letters don't have much impact anyway, citing some research suggesting that, in fact, people ignore letters. Some don't read them or don't remember receiving them. It begs the question why government communicates at all if there's no value to it. The fact is, it's obviously true that communication of an issue raises awareness of the issue. The failure to communicate meant that the issue was not sufficiently, the awareness of the issue was not possible for these people. So I recognise the challenge the challenge faced by the government here. It is, of course, difficult to assess the precise circumstances of 3.5 million women. I recognise that some of the claims made on behalf of the campaign were exorbitant. Nevertheless, there were many options on the table for the government to consider, from a hardship fund or smaller packages of support. And this was not the only option to give an absolute no, a total no, nothing at all for the WASPI women. That was not the only option. Happy to give way.
And I just wonder exactly what the Conservative policy is on WASPI women. I've been a long-standing campaigner for WASPI women, voting for the SNP motion in 2016, which the Honourable Gentleman failed to attend. But it is unclear exactly what he's saying. Is he just suggesting that, that there is no plan from the Conservatives on what they would do?
Well, thank you. I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention. The fact is we do believe there should be justice for the WASPI women. We do believe that an injustice was done and that there should be support offered to them. So there needs to be a proper cross-party agreement on this, and I look forward to hearing what the government has to say to it. We were examining the report ourselves when we were sadly removed from office, when the Honourable Lady returned to this House. I'm sure that my party would have come forward with a much better package of support than the government has done, because that would not be difficult. That would not be difficult, would it? So, happy to give way.
Thank you to the Right Honourable Gentleman for giving way. He makes an interesting point about individuals having the information to plan for their future. I wonder, therefore, if he could comment on why, under 14 years of his party's control of the Department of Work and Pensions, one of the major platforms of its work in the Pensions Dashboard programme had to be reset, and the costs associated with it have increased 23% because it basically went off the rails under his government's leadership. Well,
it's true to say that, I'm afraid to say, often there is maladministration in benefits and in welfare, and that is the consequence of this vast system that we have. And I apologise on behalf of the previous government if mistakes were made. But the point to make, Mr Chairman, is actually, under the previous government, significant increases were made, both in pensions and in benefits for pensioners. We saw the state pension rise by nearly £4,000 under the last government, and an increase of nearly 9% just in the last year alone. So I'm proud of our record in supporting pensioners. Now, I would like to, on behalf of the women, particularly the campaigners, to reflect their intense disappointment, because the fact is hope was held out to them by Labour when they were in opposition, by the Prime Minister, the now Prime Minister, the now Chancellor, the now Secretary of State, who knows, maybe the Honourable Gentleman when he was campaigning. Many, many people voted Labour at the election last year because they believed that justice would be done to the WASPI women, because that is what Labour candidates said would happen. And the broken trust that my right honourable friend so eloquently referred to is very real. And I would like to understand from the Minister why this decision was made, because it wasn't specified by the Secretary of State when she announced it. Was it because they couldn't afford it? Was it because of their newly discovered problems with the economy when they suddenly arrived in office? If so, they couldn't afford anything, nothing, no package at all could be afforded, not even a small package? Or was it because they thought it was wrong, because they thought it would be unfair, even if it was affordable, to compensate the WASPI women. If they did think that the WASPI women are owed some money, there can be no question of paying it. Justice demands it. It must be paid. Something else must give way. And I do end, and I'm afraid to make it a political point, the fact is this government has made a decision not to compensate the WASPI women because it is making payments in all sorts of other directions. There are a lot of discretionary payments being announced by this government. They've made huge salary increases to train drivers without any reforms to their productivity. They've created an energy company costing billions of pounds that doesn't make any energy. And most recently, they're paying a foreign country to take off our hands a UK sovereign territory that is vital to the defence of the UK. So there are discretionary payments available, and it is interesting to understand why on earth they haven't made this one. They didn't have to make it, and I look forward to the Minister justifying why that decision was made and what he'll do to bring justice to these women.